About over in Israel. Well, Iran is continuing to fire missiles at the country. Many of them are shot down by Israel's sophisticated defense system, but a good number of people in Israel have been injured as well. Let's get the latest for you with our correspondent in Jerusalem, Noga Tarnopolsky. Noga, look, it's day 12 of this conflict. Give us a sense of the mood in Israel and sort of how frequent these Iranian strikes are.
The launches from Iran, Nadia, are pretty constant. When there was a siren a few hours ago, now this morning here, the headlines announcing it said first siren since the morning, which had been a matter of a few hours, and it was the longest break in sirens somewhere in the country. In really what is a constant shower. Now, it's a very interesting thing. Iran is no longer launching towards Israel these massive barrages that Israelis saw back in June. At that time, it was like even 80, 100 missiles at a time. And it seemed that Iran was aiming to overwhelm the Israeli air defense system. This time it's very, very different. And each launch can include just one or three missiles, but it's enough to keep Israelis constantly in bomb shelters. And you mentioned the success of the Israeli air defense system, which is true, but it's true in part because of the discipline of Israelis who are willing to spend hours a day and all night in bomb shelters. There is a sense, however, of patience running out, of some anger at the government for the lack of planning. There's an absolute chaos in terms of messaging here towards citizens. So, on the one hand, they're told they should go back to work. On the other hand, the school system in its entirety remains closed, so people can't go back to work. No distinction has been made between the north, that is so hard hit, where people really can't leave their bomb shelters, to, for example, here in Jerusalem, where we've had, for example, yesterday, just two or three missiles launched today. So there's a feeling of tiredness, of chaos, and of a growing gap between the government and the people. But as you said, for now, in terms of injuries and deaths, the situation in Israel is better than it is in any other of the countries involved.
And look, we are nearly 2 weeks into this conflict, Noga. You talked about some mixed messaging coming out of the government. And as I understand it, neither the Prime Minister himself, Benjamin Netanyahu, nor the Defense Minister have directly addressed the Israeli population.
It's simply astonishing, Nadia. It really is. And it's become one of the main issues that is discussed now in the Israeli public space. There are two distinct things going on. On the one hand, the prime minister has not yet addressed the public. He hasn't held a press conference, neither has the defense minister, as you said. Netanyahu instead has posted a series of very brief little video clips that are directed as much to the Iranian population as to the Israeli population. And this has caused real alienation among the Israeli public, who have a sense that no one is really explaining to them what is going on or what the real aims are. In addition, under cover of war, a real power grab is underway. Yesterday, in an editorial, in an op ed headlined The War Against Democracy, the president of Tel Aviv University, Professor Ariel Porat, this was made a lot of noise in Israel, a real bombshell op ed, simply listed all of the norm breaking laws and announcements and acts undertaken by this government under cover of war, including, for the first time in writing, an explicit declaration by Prime Minister Netanyahu that he will not obey judicial orders, basically announcing that rule of law is over in Israel. This is in regards to a request by the Attorney General that he fire one of his most extremist ministers who is acting against the law. So, under this kind of chaos of war, a real power grab is underway.
And Noga, you also wanted to emphasize what is happening in the occupied West Bank amid all of this.
That's right. And honestly, in all of Palestine, the matter of Gaza and the crisis of Gaza has really fallen under the radar as the war with Iran has intensified, and matters there are getting worse as Israel has closed the border crossings, closed the ability to get aid freely into Gaza. And there are still winter conditions. And in the West Bank, we're seeing a real catastrophe underway. There's no other word for it, in which Jewish settlers are simply attacking almost at will, and sometimes under the cover of Israeli soldiers, attacking Palestinian civilians as part of what appears to be a concerted effort to disappropriate them of their land. 6 Palestinian lives have been taken under this method, and by settler attacks just in the first week of this war. And in Israel, within Israel, this is very little mentioned because, again, so much attention is being made to the government's failures and to the prowess of the Israeli military in Iran, that this unfolding catastrophe, a sort of de facto annexation of Area B of the West Bank, an area under Palestinian Authority control, is simply going unremarked, and yet it's taking lives and taking lands of people.